So what's with all the jazz musicians? Why is there a giant mural of a black man on the subway? And why are so many famous writers dead? Welcome to Harlem, New York City. Come for the brownstones. Stay because you got murdered. Wait, what? It's me. This is my channel. And now we're in Harlem, which sits right smack dab in the middle of Manhattan. But it wasn't always known as the home of hip-hop and fried chicken. From 1920 to about 1935, it was known as the birthplace of Black American culture. That period in time became known as the Harlem Renaissance. And though today's Harlem looks like any other neighborhood in New York City, during the 1920s, it was a hub of artistic creation that had an enormous impact on the United States. You could walk into a bar and hear Louis Armstrong play the trumpet, or stop by a poetry slam to see Langston Hughes read his latest work. You can still feel the legacy of the Harlem Renaissance here today, from the bars and restaurants to the street names. So let's go back in time and see what happened here. There are a lot of reasons that Harlem went from being a quiet, residential neighborhood to a murder capital of the world. And no, I'm just kidding. There weren't that many murders. But there were a lot of changes happening during the Great Migration, when millions of African Americans left the South and headed north for the cities. Now, if you know anything about the history of the United States, then you know that things haven't always been peachy keen between the races. And one of the main reasons African Americans left the South was to get away from the violence, intimidation, and yeah, let's be honest, racism that was rampant in almost every southern state. But what drew them to Harlem specifically? Well, at the beginning of the 20th century, northern cities like Chicago and Detroit were magnets for African Americans looking for factory jobs. But once they got there, they found that the living conditions were cramped and unsanitary, and there was very little opportunity for advancement. So they started heading to New York City, and specifically the neighborhood of Harlem. Harlem was far from a welcoming paradise, but it was better than the alternative. As more and more African Americans moved up north, they brought their culture with them, including their music, their food, their art, and their stories. And it all started coming together in Harlem. So while there were plenty of jobs available, they were low-paying and often dangerous. And most of the housing was terrible and extremely expensive. But something amazing started happening. The concentration of African Americans in the neighborhood led to the development of Black-owned businesses, theaters, nightclubs, restaurants. They had everything. And because of the oppression and segregation they faced in other parts of society, they created their own institutions, like the National Urban League, the YMCA, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. In fact, it was in Harlem in 1909 where the NAACP was founded to help fight against racial violence and discrimination. The best way to experience the Harlem Renaissance was through its art. The music was energetic and improvisational, full of syncopation and swing. Jazz was born out of the blues and ragtime, and it was the perfect soundtrack for a new generation of African Americans. Musicians like Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway rose to prominence during this time, and their music continues to influence artists today. If you want to hear some jazz while you're here in New York City, head over to Minton's. This is one of the oldest jazz clubs in the city, and it's located right here in Harlem. It was established in 1974, but it's continued to book some of the best jazz musicians in the world ever since. In addition to music, Harlem was also a hub for writers and poets. Langston Hughes was probably the most famous writer of the Harlem Renaissance, and he helped to establish a literary legacy that would inspire future generations of African American artists. His work often focused on themes of Black life in America, and he was a major influence on the development of jazz poetry. Hughes wasn't the only one. There were also poets like Claude McKay, whose work dealt with themes of Black identity and resistance to racism, and Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote about the culture and folklore of Black life in the South. Today, there's a street named after her right here in Harlem. If you want to learn more about the Harlem Renaissance, definitely check out the Studio Museum in Harlem. This museum was founded in 1964 to celebrate the artistic contributions of African Americans, and it's one of the most important cultural institutions in the country. They have a great collection of paintings, sculptures, photographs, and other works that capture the energy and creativity of the Harlem Renaissance. I love strolling down 125th Street, which was once the center of the Harlem Renaissance. It's now known as the shopping street of Harlem, and it's lined with tons of shops and restaurants. You can find just about anything you want here, and it's a great place to people watch. One thing you'll notice while you're walking around Harlem is the incredible architecture. The neighborhood is home to some beautiful brownstones and buildings from the early 20th century. Many of them were built during the height of the Harlem Renaissance, and they reflect the area's cultural significance during that time period. You should also take some time to explore the historic Apollo Theater, which was built in 1913. It's one of the most important theaters in the history of African American entertainment, and it's still in use today. Check out a show while you're here, and don't forget to pay your respects to the fallen. Stop by the Cotton Club, which was one of the most famous nightclubs in the history of Harlem. The club opened in 1923 and quickly became a popular spot for African American entertainers. Some of the biggest names in jazz and blues performed here, including Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, and Bessie Smith. However, the club was also a gathering place for white mobsters and gangsters. So keep an eye out for Tommy Guns. While you're in the area, definitely take some time to visit the nearby Central Park. It's one of the best parks in the city, and it's the perfect place to relax and enjoy some fresh air. Plus, it's also where John Lennon was murdered. So that's fun. That about wraps things up in Harlem. I hope you enjoyed this quick tour of one of the most important neighborhoods in the history of New York City. If you want to see more videos from us, be sure to follow our adventures around the world. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.